this outcrop of rocks that contains hundreds of petroglyphs, hundreds of symbols, hundreds of stories left behind by the ancients. And so you ask yourself, why are these symbols here? Well, this place today is called Indian Well, and there's a reason for that name. Because thousands of years ago, the ancients came to this spot and for whatever reason decided to dig a large hole right over here to find water. And of course they did. This here is a well in the middle of the desert. Now this is truly fascinating because if you look at the wall of this well over here, look at the natural break in the stone. In other words, it wasn't shaped. It goes straight on down. And if you look down there, at least with my eye, I can see to the right damp earth. So that means there's water. And so this place was very special. It was a source of life. So people came here for water and to worship, and they left behind their symbols to honor this spot. That's why these symbols are here. That's why this spot is so special. It was a source of life. I tell you, this is truly fascinating. Friends, let me show you an interesting petroglyph over here. Can you see this? It looks like a ladder, okay? But right next to the ladder, there's an arrow pointing down. You could see the end of the arrow right there. And you ask yourself, what could this represent? Now, I'm guessing, but here's what I think. I think the ladder represents going down into that well. And the rungs in a ladder indicate the depth. And you see the arrow going down. So perhaps, these rungs could tell the ancients that, the well was 30 feet deep, 20 feet deep, and behind this rock. Again, this is supposition on my part, but sometimes these petroglyphs, they're not that mysterious. In other words, when you're looking at them, they make sense to what you're thinking about. In other words, I believe that the ancients had intelligence just like we do today. And so, when you look at a symbol and you try to translate it, the process would probably be the same back then as it is today. And the only difference between the ancients and us today is technology. Well, I'm at another petroglyph that my friend Dave pointed out to me. I hadn't noticed it before, but this is an interpretation that we came upon. Here's a male figure right over here, one right here, stick figure. You can tell it's a male. There's the appendage. And again, the second male right here, and as you can see, the feet here and another appendage. And right there next to these two other males is one male right over here. You can see it. And he's holding something right there in his arms. And we were looking at it and we were wondering, what is he holding in his hands? And my guess, my thought is that what he's holding is a snake. These three people, these three natives, were on a hunt. And of course, desert life over here is quite harsh. And actually, a snake is a good source of food. And so this is actually what a snake would look like if you killed one, holding it at the tail end right over here, and that's the head over here. So this pictograph, or I should say this petroglyph, is a hunting scene. Anyways, that's my guess. Am I wrong? Am I right? Who knows? this is a very fascinating site. Many motifs, many petroglyphs with many different meanings. But I found an interesting one right over here below me. Let me show it to you. It's simple, but it's very interesting. You see this circular pattern right here and these lines right here? I've seen this symbol in many other places, and in some cultures this has been interpreted as the symbol of a falling star or a comet, and behind it, those lines are the contrails that are formed as it enters our atmosphere. So this is a guess on my part, but as I said in a past and other locations, this has been the interpretation of that symbol. Well, friends, you know, hiking here amongst the petroglyphs is truly a joy. But I tell you, you know, being in a Mojave during the springtime is absolutely fascinating. You know, if you come here in the summer and it's 120 plus degrees and it's just all brown and everything looks dead, you could never suppose that they have so much life over here. So we're here in the springtime, and look at the vibrancy, look at the life that we encounter. I tell you, it's absolutely gorgeous. As I was walking along the base of this boulder outcrop, looking at the symbols, I encountered this large boulder right over here before us. What's fascinating about this boulder is that it was used to prepare food. This is known as a grinding slick. Let's take a look right over here. Let me come around. I'm going to put my hand right over here, okay? Right over here. It's as smooth as silk. And the reason is, this is where they prepared some food. This is where they ground seeds and plant life for sustenance. And they would have a stone, a flat stone, where they would grind in this action. So this is a lot different than the type of food preparation boulders that you would see, for example, in oak savanna areas. In that case, there would be circular holes, mortars where the food would be pounded. Over here, it was ground this way. So this is truly fascinating. So there's a spot here and there's a spot there. And I looked over and I saw another spot right over here. Here's another place where they ground their food. Now this is a desert area, so there's a sparsity of food items. But look at this. Right over here, for example, there's some wheat-like substance right here. And here's another example right here next to the grinding slick. You see these here? Let's call this a wheat type plant. So these seeds, these plants would be picked right here and around the desert area and then ground down into a flour-like substance. I'll tell you, you know, in this area, in this desert environment, you had to use everything you could to sustain yourself. Well, as I'm climbing around these boulders, I saw an interesting symbol right over here. Let me take you to it. Right over here. Do you see this over here? Right there. As soon as I saw it, to me, this is an image of a desert tortoise. You can see the shell right there, and of course, the long neck sticking out. This is very typical of what a desert tortoise would look like. Well, before us we have another really fascinating panel over here. You can see this big rectangular shape, and on to the left you can see a series of squares, and to the right you can see a squiggly line and some other motifs. But what's interesting is right next to it there's what I call a zigzag line going up there, and then next to that there's a series of double circles, 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. There's the top one, middle one, and then the bottom one. And they're all interconnected. So there's a lot going on here. What is the story that they were trying to tell us? That's the mystery. And that's what makes this so fascinating. As I'm climbing around these boulders, I came across a really interesting section right over here. Let me go down and show you what I found. By the way, that's me over there in front of us. Now this is very interesting. Here is another grinding slick. So people lived here. And of course, water was here. That's why they lived here. But again, this here is as smooth as silk here. But look at this. There's a bunch of initials right there, and a date at the bottom says 1912. August 9th, 1912. I'm going to come in real close. So this is very interesting. Over 100 years ago, there looks to be like a series of three initials. It looks like LK and then E, maybe a G, and then BF. And right above these interesting set of initials, there's another grouping right over here. And it's dated 1919. Can you see it right here? 1919. Very nice. And it says, looks like an O or C, and the name is S-I-E-L-E, Seal. And then there's B, Westir, W-E-S-T-I-R, Westir. And it says, oh, April 19th, 1919. Now there's another set of initials or names above, but I can't tell. So this is a really unique rock. Not ancient, historic, but nonetheless, if you consider the dates over here of 1919 and down over here, let's see, of 1912, this here is over 100 years old. So I find that fascinating. Now before us we have a very interesting symbol and somewhat significant. This seems to be a petroglyph, a symbol of an atlatl. And the Atlatl symbol usually has a line right here with a circle right here, and right at the bottom it has a little crook right here. Can you see it? Now the Atlatl preceded the bow and arrow in North America, and this occurred about 1500 years ago. So if we were to use that marker, we would say this symbol is approximately 1500 years old. Now the atlatl was a throwing implement. It was a spear thrower or an arrow thrower, and as I said, it preceded the development of the bow and arrow.